If you notice this in Iksar today, talks about a story of two martyrs who stood up against heretics, right? They stood up against the Arians. They had بدأت Arius. And actually, بدأت Arius, like the Arians, we kind of take it lightly. But during that time was actually a very tough time of persecution. Because during that time, actually, Arius was very smart. He was very well spoken and very, very popular. Very popular, very well known. He had a lot of followers and very devout followers. Very, very devout followers. You can compare him today to some of the denominations that have very strong leaders and they follow them blindly. Some of the denominations that believe that us being Orthodox means that we worship idols, for example, for wearing a cross. Things like this. And we see the bravery of the two saints. They walk in on a false liturgy. They had the guts to pray a liturgy, those are the Arians. And they would think, and just like we see in some of the denominations, even in Egypt, when they pray whatever their equivalent is of the liturgy. But these saints were brave enough to walk in and say that this kind of, the only sacrifice you're worthy of offering on our altars, or you're not worthy to offer sacrifice on our altars. If you're going to offer sacrifice, offer it on the altars of the pagans. Right? They felt so entitled, these Arians, to the point that they came to our churches and they would try to raise the sacrifice there. And the saints were brave enough that they didn't let this defilement get into the church at any cost, and it cost them their life. And it wasn't an easy death. It says they were beaten to death. They were beaten to if any of you are familiar with the medical side of things, for you to be beaten to death, it's actually, it's one of those things which means your body goes into shock. It's a very painful process. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's not like an easy death where it's like, oh yeah, and you close your eyes and that's it, you cross over to the other world. That's not how it works. And we read today also in the gospel how Christ says that we will be persecuted. It's kind of poetic that we read in the Synaxarion today that the persecution that the martyrs faced was actually an internal persecution, not like what we usually see. The Arians considered themselves Christians, or today they would be considered Christians. They believe in someone called Jesus, and they're not like idol worshippers, they're not like Diocletian or something like this, and this is actually the same kind of persecution that we face today. Today in our world, the persecution that we face is a persecution of thought, and it's an internal persecution. Meaning what? Meaning a country built on Christian beliefs is now turning on its own beliefs. Meaning that within Christianity, there's many denominations and many false teachings. Meaning that even us as believers, true believers of the truth, that sometimes we get deceived by things that we see out there. We also read how God how God deals with those who testify for His name. The martyrs get the crown of life, right? And then in the gospel we read that even though you're going to go through all this, not a hair on your head will be touched. No offense to anybody bald, but this is not what we're talking about here. It's an analogy, or the meaning of it is that nothing is going to harm you. Okay, balding is genetic. Don't take it literally. Okay. The other thing is that we also read how the devil looks at people who preach falsely. We read in the Heresies, one of my favorite stories. There's the apostles and St. Paul and St. Peter, and we have these like pillars of the faith, and they go and they exorcise demons. Okay? And these people were like, okay, why not? Right? Right? Just like we see on TV, in the name of Jesus, right? Today. But today the devil doesn't need to ridicule these people himself. Today social media does that already. But back then there wasn't social media. فالشيطان اتكلم. And he says, Jesus I know, Paul I know, مين حضرتك? Who are you? وبعدين الشيطان اداهم حتة علقة to the point it says that they got beaten to the point that all their clothes were torn, and كانت فضيحة in the middle of in the town, right? So it shows that when we give in to false teachings, Christ is no longer with us and the devil has full authority. Right? The devil wants to convince us that it's okay, do what you want, you're powerful, you're different, be strong, and then the moment that we let go of our Christ, he has back control. Like, you're in my field. And this is the danger of it. The devil wants to ridicule God's creation. It's a war. It's a competition to him. The sin that the devil fell in is pride. And pride means that he will what? That he will always want to, anytime God does something, he tries to one-up it. That's why St. John Chrysostom says that the devil imitates. The devil does not know naturally how he's going to tempt or what he's going to do in the world. But he looks at something and he imitates it. And we see that. We have prophets. Then he comes up with what? False prophets. مش كده؟ مش ده اللي بيحصل? And we can see that. False prophets within Christianity that claim to be Christians or say, some of them are even, can be very emotional and cry and say, I've mentioned this before. Some people that will say that I found the Ark of Covenant. Some people that would say, we found the blood of Christ. We found it and we were able to actually حلله in a lab and it had half the number of chromosomes. كلام that doesn't make sense. These are false prophets. Right? And then of course we have the other extreme false prophets of people who start religions and claim that angels gave them books and things like that. And we see what these kind of religions are doing in the Middle East. Okay? So, prophets, the devil will give us false prophets. Okay? We have, for example, the rainbow. The rainbow was what in the Bible?
Symbol of
the
peace.
promise between a symbol of what?
It's a symbol of that the flood was over.
Yes, it's like a covenant of peace between, it's a promise between God and man, right? And then today we see what it's been turned into, right? And so on and so forth. Even in songs today, like we see in the liturgy, for example, right? We see the tunes, the beautiful tunes that we have in the liturgy. If you go actually focus on the music in the Middle East, you'll find that all of the music has originated originally from our hymns. By the way, and then of course الطوارئ بقت حاجات لا تليق. So even we have spiritual songs and music that we are supposed to fill our brains with. The devil gives us something else, right? We have beautiful hymns, we have beautiful songs, we have church fathers, and then he gives us, I'm not going to mention names of artists that we follow. The world has gotten to a point that we idolize, even just the word, that we idolize celebrities and things like that in our life. They are our example, right? A lot of people are like, أنا حلمي إن أنا أقابل تامر حسني. هيعمل لك إيه يعني? Right? Or it's my dream, I want to go and my dream, who is the number one person? I want to meet Messi or Ronaldo. أو مش عارف إيه. Like for the people who like soccer. طيب have we ever thought that one day بقى مش عايزين نقابل ربنا? We will meet God. And you will stand before Him and you will give account. How many of us actually, their dream is to have a conversation with the saints? How many of us have a deep relationship with the saints and wonder, like, I want to know, I wonder if, St. George is cool. How many of us wonder? Sometimes as kids we see these, like in Sunday school, you're like, I wonder if St. George was like really, how long it took him to ride a horse or something like this. Simple questions like that show that the kids usually focus in Sunday school on what? Their relationship with the saints. But the devil sees this and he gives us that حاجات تانية to focus on. It's very important. Why am I mentioning all of this? It's because it's very important to pay attention to the false teachings around us, and that we have to stand firm in our faith. We have to stand in the right doctrine, even if it's risky on my reputation or my life or whatever. It's important for me to have the correct faith and not to compromise. The problem with what is happening in this country is not the Democrats, it's not the president, all this stuff. لا لا لا. كل الكلام ده is just politics. The deep issue, the root of the issue is that the country has turned away from God. Is that we started compromising our faith. What made America very strong is that it was built on Christian values. Whether people like this statement or not, this is their reality. The Constitution was built on Christianity. And when we started being more liberal, this is when separation started to happen. In fact, it's not like one party is bad and one, they're both corrupt, they're both horrible. مفيش حاجة اسمها a politician that wants everything good for us. مفيش حاجة اسمها كده. But the root of everything is my values, and these values come from Christianity. So if you really are thinking about healing the world, or what is the solution to this world, is for the world to look to God again, for this country to look to God again. And it starts with us. We were brought over here from Egypt and from the Middle East, not because of course we want to make a better life for us and our kids, but God allowed for every single one of us to be here to evangelize. Evangelism, again, is not me going door to door, but it's through my actions. It's through actually me being strong in the faith. When you talk to someone who's strong in the faith, or someone who truly believes, you can tell without him or her having to actually say anything. It's obvious. Through their actions, through their values, كل الكلام دوت. مش كده؟ It's important for us to hold on to the right doctrine, and it's important for us to avoid the wrong doctrines, and it's very critical for us to realize that the devil, even if he makes it seem like things are fun and things are great, that as soon as we fall, he will be the first to ridicule us, as he did with these men who tried to exorcise the demon, even though they were doing it in the name of, they were doing just like the apostles. It's very important to keep this in mind. Hold on to the right doctrine and understand the belief correctly. That way, when you see falsehoods, you're able to block them out of your system, out of your life, and away from your family. May God give us the blessing and the wisdom to deal with the wars that we face today, and to be having strong roots in the church and in the correct faith. And glory be to God forever and ever.